Thank you very much, everyone. Today I will basically present on youth involvement in Agenda 2063, especially the advocacy and campaign aspect of it. And I'm sure most of us are very familiar with the word advocacy and campaigns. And some of you in one way or another have been part and parcel of advocacies in your different respective churches and also different movements that all of you are involved in. Today's focus area, so number one is out, understanding Agenda 2063, of which I'm sure by now all of us are very well versed with it. And I also want to trust that after here you will go and read more on the Agenda 2063, so we should not dwell so much on it. There's just so much to learn, and you cannot learn everything in a day. And the second focus is the role of youth in the agenda. And we'll go step by step, and I'll give you some few examples of the practical steps of advocacy. In the morning, we were briefly told of the youth age, especially the AU youth bracket, which is between 15 and 35. But I want to give you a brief example of how it is in most countries. And I'll give an example in this case of my country, South Sudan. For the last 2 years, young people and parliamentarians have been having back and forth conversation about what youth bracket should we allocate to the youth? How many age, or what age should we allocate to the youth? Just imagine a whole country, a whole youth, and a whole government is just sitting down and having back and forth debate on can we make the youth all from 18 to 40, from 20 to 35. So there was a lot of conversations in that, which is not making sense, because if you go beyond that, South Sudan, much as it is the youngest nation in the world, it is part of African Union. And the African Union youth bracket is 15 to 35. That case should be closed, right? And it's not only in South Sudan. We know in countries like Sudan and Egypt also, it's still the question of youth is questionable. I remember last year in the Sudan peace process, the Sudan now the northern part, a youth, someone who was 40 years was claiming to be a youth because he wanted to be part of the mediation process of what is happening. And if not, he was not going to allow other youth from other regions like Darfur, Nuba Mountains, and Blue Nile be part of this. So it was a lot of issue. Even the age itself is a problem, and it's very problematic within different states. We all know the population demography of youth in Africa. We know it's the population in Africa is youthful, the youngest nation, or I mean the youngest population overall in the world. And with such youthful population, this calls for an increase in investment, especially in economic and social development factors. So in this case, after learning what Agenda 2063 is, we've all looked at all the aspirations, the different programmatic areas, and what has been done and what has not been done. And we know from where we are, most of us, or few of us might make it, inshallah, might make it until 2063. And we might look back and say, what did we do during our time when we were youth? Because all the questions are all on our minds. So what is our role? I will just go through a few of the roles. I want to ask all of us here, which ministries in your governments are responsible for the implementation of Agenda 2063? Let me know how many useful youth we have here. I'm not saying you're useless, no. Please don't misquote me. Which ministries in your governments are responsible for the implementation of Agenda 2063? We've heard from Caroline and Dr. Fidon that the Agenda 2063 has been ratified by all member states of African Union. And member states are 55, including Sahrawi or Western Sahara. So which ones of your ministries are responsible for the implementation of Agenda 63? Agenda 2063. Anyone? All? No, it's not all of it. It's one key ministry. Pardon? So the question is, which ministries in your countries, within your government is responsible or is monitoring the implementation or is leading actually the implementation of Agenda 2063? We know when it comes to Agenda 1325 of Women, Peace and Security, we know mostly is the Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Social Work, we know all that, right? But now for the flagship and blueprint project of Africa, the Africa we want.
Presidential affairs.
Presidential affairs, one of them. Yes. So it's foreign affairs. Yes, foreign affairs. Yes, foreign affairs is there. Yes. Yes.
I think for Nigeria here, we have a Ministry of Youth and Sports, but I don't think it's pronounced here in Nigeria.
Oh, Ministry of Youth and Sports. Okay. Anyway, not all ministries within the African states are the same. The names, they are different. They are very different. But what is very important here is if we are aware of those ministries existing and they're doing their work. If we are not aware, and then we have a task ahead of us. Because one of our major roles here is to push for the incorporation of the agenda into our national action plans. We do have different national action plans within. Yes, sorry.
I just wanted to add the finance and planning
Ministry of Finance, Planning and Budget Allocation. Yes. Thank you, Caroline. Okay. So one major role of the youth is to push for the incorporation of the agenda into national action plans, making sure that whatever is being discussed within your country, it has to be in line with what your country is a signatory to. The other one is inclusion in implementation, monitoring and evaluation of programs, policies, investment of resources from start to finish. If you're now aware that Agenda 2063 has been incorporated into the National Action Plan of your country, it is very important, very, very important to be part of the implementation, regardless of where you are. If you're in the civil society organizations, CSOs, or in the organizations, you can somehow mainstream it into the different programmatic areas and monitoring how it is even being done within the country. And if it is not being done according to, if there is no progress, and then as a young person, you have the right to call the leaders out, because the progress of Agenda 2063 is not going to be measured on how much has different organizations done or how much has basically church organizations have done, but it is how much has your government done or a member state. If there is no progress in that aspect, and then there is no visibility of what your country is doing. So it's very important to be part of it from the beginning until the end. And then also monitoring the implementation of the agenda, especially at the national, regional, and international continental level. You can only feel the pressure if you know maybe Kenya is doing well in the implementation of Agenda 2063, and a country like, for instance, Burundi, for instance, if we are still lagging behind, then you will know that, oh, but other countries like Kenya or Tanzania are doing well. What about us Burundians? So which means we're not taking it serious. Also keeping track and being woke of whatever is happening within the regions and also at the continental level. And in this aspect, you're not just being a youthful person, but you're being more useful to your own community and also looking at the vision of the Agenda 2063. And lead the implementation of the agenda. It's a little bit of repetition. Here again, there is nothing for us if it is not including us, or nothing for us without us. The other important aspect here on how the young people can be engaged also, or the role of youth here, is having the access to accurate information. It was a bit absurd for us here. Most of us did not understand or did not know so much about Agenda 2063, and we are here discussing about it, even when it is already on so many websites, including the AU website. So it's upon us to access this kind of information, understand it very well, and we really understand that there is so much for us as young people that we're expected to do at the same time, which is very overwhelming. Here we're talking about women, peace and security, youth, peace and security, Agenda 2063, 2030, the SDGs. So it's so much information that we feel overwhelmed. We don't know which one is a priority. And it makes even going to different resource institutions a little bit boring, because you don't know what you should focus on, because you have a lot that is being expected of you. But you should identify that you're African first before you're anything else. So anything for your country or for your continent is the utmost interest. Here, the other one is the power sharing in between and among stakeholders, so that young people are also partners and leaders rather than just beneficiaries. We've seen this discussion of how can we incorporate young people? Should they be just beneficiaries and waiting to be told what to do and how to do it, but just being part of the entire process? So that's basically, there's so many roles of young people, but these are just a few that I want to share with you today. I want to take us a little bit to practical steps of advocacy. This cannot work out if we do not master the game of advocacy. And there's so many things that we know. Like I said, so many of us here might have been, or must have, of course, been part of different advocacy initiatives, and we know how it has worked best. But how can we bring that aspect and incorporate it into Agenda 2063? And here, just a brief overview of what advocacy is. It's just a process of building support for a specific issue or cause and influencing others to take action in order to achieve a desired change. And why is advocacy very, very helpful in our society today, or in anything that we do in this matter? In this case, especially when Agenda 2063 is in question, we're trying to ensure that key decision makers are held accountable for implementing Agenda 2063. We are advocating for them to be, we're trying to hold them accountable if they're not doing so, but that is only through advocacy. And also we want to ensure sufficient financial resources are allocated for programs and services through the national action plans. There is nothing that can work out especially if it is a big initiative like Agenda 2063, if it is incorporated into national action plans, it cannot work out if there is no resources attached to it. Most countries are giving excuses of we don't have enough resources to implement these agendas, these aspirations, and etc., or it is overwhelming and a lot of excuses. But then they are not putting that as a major concern when it comes to budget allocation for the country, the annual budget allocation, which is very critical. And this is where, as young people, we have to look at that aspect how do they incorporate the Agenda 2063 when it comes to financial allocation. And also we want to create support among community members and generate demand for implementing specific aspirations of the agenda. Like Dr. P. Fidon said, you cannot have a mass change without a number. There is power in number. There is power as youth if we unite together, especially in our individual countries. And also advocacy helps us to inform the general public and opinion leaders about an issue or a problem, to mobilize them to apply pressure to decision makers. We know how some of our government officials are very, very scared of some opinionated, is it even the right English word? Opinionated? Okay. Some opinion-driven individuals, they are very shaken if they are called to talk about an issue because they know they will touch the buttons that are untouchable. So informing the general public about that, especially these individuals, is very, very key in advocacy. And also creating behavioral changes that affect practices, beliefs, and systems. In this case, it's mostly, you might go as a young person to try to talk about Agenda 2063, and they will tell you, but that's not our point of concern. We want to be concerned about the flooding issue or the humanitarian crisis. But they don't know that these are all elements which are supposed to be addressed under Agenda 2063, only that they are not acknowledging it under that. So I want to take you to different practical steps. So don't worry, I will share this. Some of you who are writing, I will just share this presentation later. So you can just take a look at it. These are just 10. There's so many different campaign tools or steps to developing an advocacy campaign, but these are few of them. Number one, I wish you could see that. Can you see it? Okay. One is identify the issue. I'll give an example of how this step has been one of the most powerful tools that has been used and has worked out. And then number two is deepen understanding. And then number three is conduct stakeholder analysis and identify target audience. And then number four is set a goal. I will repeat, set a goal, set a goal, set a goal. If you don't have a goal, you cannot have an effective advocacy. And set a goal and objectives, and then develop a strategic action plan. Let's go to number 6. Number 6 is create key messages, identify allies, and build support, very important. Deal with opposition, very important. Monitor and evaluate. Monitoring and evaluation in this matter. You have to keep track of what you're doing, and then maintain accountability. I will give you just a scenario of what happened last month, 3 weeks ago. Arek, I'm sure you might add to that in different spaces. So in South Sudan, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, his wife is, so this is not exactly in line. This story is not in line with it's not in line with Agenda 2063, but I want to just bring that aspect and try to use it into these 10 steps of developing an advocacy campaign. Is that okay? Can I use that example? Okay, thank you. So the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs has a wife, and the wife is a footballer and plays for the regional FC clubs. The footballers here understand FC, I don't even know. Oh, football clubs, okay. Plays for the football clubs in the regions. And the husband is a Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. But he's not happy by the fact that the wife is working, is a football player and a professional, because they call her one of the international football names, but I will not bring it here for her safety. So recently, she was assaulted by her husband. She was beaten and stabbed by a knife, or stabbed with a knife. The husband stabbed her, but she didn't die. She didn't succumb to that wound, but she was bruised so badly. And no one in that aspect would even think that anyone in that matter, for a human being, let alone a national minister of humanitarian affairs and disaster management, is the real disaster in his family, you know? And that caused a lot of anger among the South Sudanese. People mobilized and said, what should we do here? So in this case, what is the problem? We've already identified the issue. The issue is a national minister stabbed the wife. And you cannot, with that understanding of the issue, you cannot just go maybe to the street and start demonstrating and etc. But you need to understand deeper. So the women group also went deeper to understand what really happened and why was this the case. Why did the husband even stab her? anyway, you cannot justify for perpetrators, but you need to have clarity on what you want to go for, you want to advocate for. You have to understand the entire story. And then in this case also, so when we go to number 3, conducting now stakeholder analysis. And identify target audience. So the target audience here in this issue is a different line ministries that are capable of firing firing the minister, including his party. Number 1 is his party. Number 2 is the vice president of gender and social affairs. And youth affairs, sorry, and Ministry of Legal Affairs, of judiciary related issues, Ministry of Justice, we call it so. And then when you go ahead in this story, or in this case, or this issue, when you want to set a goal, the goal here is for him, for justice, there has to be justice for this lady. Above all, this guy has to be fired, this minister has to be fired from his position, and also not just being fired and left like that, but he has to be taken to the court of law, where he would have to do inhuman act like that. And then in this case, women sat down and said, okay, so what is our strategic action plan here? Apart from calling one of them is of course calling out the press, calling out the different party leaders to fire this guy. And they said, okay, the first week you have to talk about firing him, and then the following week, if nothing happens, then you have to change the strategy. And if nothing happens, then the strategy keeps changing. It's also for our own understanding that the strategy in advocacy keeps changing every time. You might set one strategy of, for example, want to achieve aspiration number 1, and then nothing happens, then you will see what are we doing wrong or what are we doing right that is not working out or is working out. So you can build on that, or you can change the course. So going to the 6th one in that storyline, creating key messages, and in this case, people were calling out fires Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and there were so many messages that have been developed and were used by women and different allies that came to support women in this call. And identifying allies is very, very important in advocacy. There were so many people that came in support, both the male and female allies, and even both within his party. He was fired from his party. And one of the things that people are still dealing with is the fact that a whole cabinet has continued to keep him as a minister of of humanitarian affairs and disaster management, yet he has caused disaster in his family. And then dealing with opposition. You know, it is very funny. I was following up some of these stories online, and in this case, people were saying, these are now dealing with opposition. People were saying, some people came online and said, okay, you guys, you have to leave this minister alone. This is a matter of his family. Will you accept in this matter that this is a matter of his family? Should it be left because it was a matter of his family? It's not. It's a criminal issue. He stabbed someone. He's capable. He actually, in this case, almost committed a murder. So who knows how many times he continued to assault this wife or the people who even stay with him in the family. You know? It is very problematic. And then monitor and evaluate. So in this case, the people that you're trying to bring on board to make sure that this advocacy goes through, you have to monitor. And if they don't do something, you keep them accountable. That's number 10 now, that maintaining accountability. He has not been fired, but he has been disowned by his party members. That is one objective which has been already achieved. But the overall objective or overall goal is still maintaining. He's still in the position, and above all, he has not been taken to court for what he has done. So this monitoring has to continue. Monitoring and evaluating the entire process of what is going to be done to him has to continue. And also maintaining the accountability and calling out the people that you're not doing the right thing. And this can be done majorly by young people. And there is so much power in social media, so much power with the technology that we have in our hands. And this takes me to the next, there are only two means of advocacy that I want to stress here, because this is one of our major concerns for young people. Utilize technology. I know countries that are shaken by young people. And I've seen countries like Sudan that overthrew a dictator, Omar Bashir, through social media, through technology. So there is power in social media. This is the tool that young people has to use for advocating for Agenda 2063, the different aspirations. If they are not working out, call them out. And then one other aspect that is very, very important is storytelling. And this takes us back to African traditional society, where it is the best form of creating a change within our society. We've seen how music has been a very powerful tool when it comes to changing narratives within the society, causing all the different forms of changes that we want to see. So these two tools are very powerful, especially to us. We young people pay attention so much to. We like lively things. We don't want to be bored by things. We want music. And music that are very that are conscious music. And poetry. We've seen how people are moved by poetry. You see what Chimamanda is doing to the entire African continent with her with her poems. Ooh, I'm not a poetry. Okay, I'm not a poet. And also with drama, the different drama industries or cinema industries within Africa has been very powerful, and it is young people that are leading this. So there's so much power in storytelling and also utilizing the technology. And if there's anything that has made us realize that these are really powerful tools, it's COVID-19. It came with a lot of disaster, but it came also with a lot of opportunities, especially for young people. Like, yes, Afro cinema, to be continued, to God be the glory, those ones. Yes, like Fela Kuti said. Fela Kuti is a Nigerian human rights activist. He is a musician. He said, I must first identify as an African to have an identity. So before we do anything, we are Africans, and we want to build on the legacies of our forefathers who fought for colonialism, who fought against apartheid. We have to carry on, and that only can be, they can only be proud of what we do today if we try to put our energies and mindsets into the implementation of Agenda 2063. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much. Shukran. Merci. Siabonga, if that's the correct word. Thank you.